Joining us now, former WWF wrestler Lanny Poffo and the ex-wife of Stone Cold Steve Austin and former wrestler Debra Marshall is with us. All right, Lanny, it seems to be that, we have some wrestlers on that will state the obvious, tell the truth, that it was widely known in the industry that this was commonly used, these steroids. Will you admit that they are?
I didn't come here to besmirch the reputations of some very great men. I almost don't deserve to be here because
How about tell the truth about a problem where these guys may be affected in a negative way, that they become violent and maybe help save other people's lives and other people from violence?
That's what I want to do.
Why don't you just tell the truth?
I want to tell the truth.
So is it widely known that steroids are used by professional wrestlers?
Steroids are used all over the board, and steroids are the worst thing in the world. And I'd like to get to the bottom of it too.
But specifically, it's used in the wrestling world.
It's used in bodybuilding. It's used in baseball. I mean,
is it used? I didn't ask you about baseball or bodybuilding. I asked you if you know, as an insider, that steroids were commonly used. This is a simple question.
Yes, steroids are commonly used. However, I urinated in more cups in the World Wrestling Federation than I did urinals.
I appreciate that. Debra, we've had you on the show a number of times, and you've been very outspoken. You've taken a lot of heat for your commentary, but there is this mysterious resistance. There's almost this code of silence. Nobody wants to admit what we all know. Why?
I know. That's what it is. I'm listening to Lanny, and I'm going, Lanny, you know what goes on here. I was married to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the thing about Steve, he didn't have to take that test. If Steve didn't want to take the steroid test, he wouldn't. I mean, that's what gets me so upset, are the guys that are protecting all our friends that are ended up dying taking all these steroids, and something's got to be done. Someone has to speak up here.
Well, Lanny,
and I just don't understand it.
Well, but Debra lived through and has described on this program something called roid rage. Now that we got you to admit that the steroid, you did. Well, that steroid use is common.
I want to say one thing that has happened with the steroid rage, and I've never said this to anyone, but one time Steve was on one of those rages, and he put a gun to my head and said, Debra, if you're so upset with me, why don't you pull the trigger? And I'm like, Steve, calm down, take your finger off the trigger. I mean, who's to say that that second couldn't have been, and I would have been dead? It's stuff like that. It's
Debra,
crazy.
how often did that kind of incident happen?
That would happen all the time, and it would be, I mean, the last time that Steve hit me on one of his rages was because I had company at my house. These rages will go off for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart to see these other wrestlers,
Lanny,
and they take up for this.
Lanny, did you take steroids?
Actually, yes. I experimented with steroids one time. The year was 1989. It was the summer of my discontent. I'm very ashamed to say, in May and June of 1989, I took steroids, and I had two very bad side effects, and I never took them again.
What were the side effects?
Side effects was acne vulgaris and testicular atrophy. Now, I'm happy to say that, as you can see, my acne cleared up, and you'll have to take my word for it that the testicular atrophy is back to normal.
What about mood changes? Did you experience any mood changes?
I'm the most benign man you've ever met. I'm like a freak in that nature.
So there was no mood change. And have you seen other wrestlers, though, using these substances, go through mood swings?
Yes.
Could you give me an example?
No.
Why not?
It's just that it's all been documented. Wrestling is very, very stressful. It was also the greatest 8 years of my life when I was with the World Wrestling Federation.
Are you trying to protect the WWE or trying to protect fellow wrestlers? Is that why you don't want to be more specific about what you've seen?
I'm no longer on the payroll. I'm healthy, wealthy, and free. I have nothing to fear, and nobody's got any strings on me.
Why wouldn't you want to help us shed some light on this as somebody who experienced this and was there?
I want to shed light on it. I'm here to do that. I appreciate the fact that you asked me back. And I wish it was a world where there were no steroids. I'm ashamed to admit that I did take steroids, but it was an experiment. I failed, I flunked, and I figure if I can help one child, just like I think it's wonderful what Debra is doing.
Well, can't you help by giving, for example, you don't even have to mention names, but couldn't you share with us something, what you've experienced, some of what you've seen? Does it match what Debra is talking about in terms of what she experienced with her husband?
There's a visual test that is very conclusive. If it looks too good to be true, it's too good to be true. There's a body you get from natural bodybuilding, and there's a body you get from freakiness.
All right. right, we'll be back in just a moment.
We'll take a break. We'll come back more on the Benoit family tragedy coming up after the break.
We now continue with WWF wrestler Lanny Poffo and ex-wife of Stone Cold Steve Austin and former WWE wrestler Debra Marshall. Lanny, when we talk about the fact that this doctor, Dr. Aston, is now being looked at by the feds because of perhaps overprescribing medications, were you aware of doctors that would do this for professional wrestlers?
No, I wasn't really in the loop. I was always the road less traveled. I always went my own way. I lived by a little bit of a saying, I'll be myself or I'll be by myself. And, you know, I'll tell you what, though, most of the doctors that I know are very, very good. I just think that doctors like this, the ones that hurt Judy Garland and the ones that hurt Elvis Presley, the ones that will write you prescriptions, they're more vile than the putrid slime that
but in the
clings to the gates of hell.
WWE, were there doctors, let me ask Debra, were there doctors everybody knew they could go to get what they wanted and needed to buff themselves up?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said before, I would definitely love to see the DEA come in and investigate all the personal doctors. But I know for a fact down in Florida, Steve Austin, we met, or we were down there and he met with Eddie Guerrero's doctor in Florida.
Lanny, the WWE issued a statement right away saying the murders, the Benoit murders, had to be acts of deliberation because of the spacing of time between them. It could not have been roid rage. It seems as if they protested too much and right away had to come forward and as if to exonerate themselves from any implication. Do you see it that way, or what am I missing here?
Well, that was a Shakespearean quote from Hamlet. And what are you missing? The thing is, about 3 months ago in Virginia Tech, a man went nuts, and he didn't have any muscles, he wasn't on steroids, so everybody was talking about gun control. I say, blame Benoit, blame whomever. But it's a panacea to think that I'm going to blame steroids. What if I get drunk and go driving and
We're
kill
talking
you?
about a culture, though, in the WWE where everybody says, this is what I need to do to have this kind of buffed-up body to be appealing to the fans, and a culture of doctors that are available to wrestlers who can get this kind of medication. So it's not one isolated instance like Virginia Tech. We're talking about a subculture here.
That's right, and I'm 52 years old, and that must be some kind of world record for a wrestler. I mean, it's terrible. I've lost a lot of friends, and I would love to see something like this cause something really great to happen, a ban of all steroids all over the world.
Hey, Lanny, it's Sean again here. Look, I agree with you. I think what you're saying is everyone's got to be responsible for their behavior, but if somebody takes a particular drug and it impacts them negatively, the guy that commits the murder is still responsible, but it could have an impact. And if there's a culture that condones it, you know, to prevent future murders or abuse, we need to know the impact of steroids on people, right? That's fair.
You're absolutely right. However, I believe that we need to talk about spousal abuse. There are women that are trapped in a horrible situation. They need intervention. They need restraining orders. They need divorces. You don't deserve to live with somebody unless it enhances both of your lives. You need to separate. And we need people.
Well, try living with someone and throwing some steroids and pills mixed in with that with a little alcohol. That's a little bit of a big nightmare to live. And I can't imagine what Nancy went through with all this. It's like deja vu to me.
Debra, I think you're very brave for coming out here. I just hope that it helps, because I know that there's a lot of women that are suffering, and men too. It's just hard to live together, I guess. And it's not always because of steroids.
I think we definitely got to clean up the WWE, because, you know, we've lost so many friends, and it's so sad. And I think we all, especially me being a wife and a wrestler,
ask you both this question.
My platform to speak up.
What responsibility? We talked about Elvis earlier, Larry.
Lanny.
I'm sorry, Lanny. What responsibility does a doctor have if he's prescribing these drugs and making them readily available to either wrestlers or Hollywood stars of some kind?
Well, what's the difference between God and a doctor? For one thing, God doesn't think he's a doctor. Okay, I make a little joke.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are some good doctors, and there are some doctors that are so arrogant and full of pomposity, and I suspect them for trying to pay off their student loans and not caring about us.
But this is never...
I think they're disingenuous. Yes?
But this is never about the steroid distribution. It's never about anything except helping these guys bulk up, pump up so they can win these matches, right?
Well, all I can tell you is, in my 52 years, the best 8 years of my life were in the WWF or WWE.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy and very grateful that I was in it, but I want to see the steroids addressed and cleaned up, not just that, but smoking, drinking, and drugs.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you again. Thank you, Debra. Thanks for coming back on our show tonight.